It's so beautiful to be together. So beautiful that the rain has stopped just long enough to enable us to not be rained upon, but that still keeps filling our days and nights. So, as always, we'll start with some questions, or at least one, that have come in advance. I was given these as I just walked in, so. When I meet spiritually elevated souls, people, gurus, tears flow down my face and I am tongue-tied. I am not able to ask questions in my mind. Why does this happen? Is the drishti too powerful? Please explain why. Questions are of the mind. The mind is the only part of us that's troubled. Sometimes we say, my heart feels this, but the truth is, it's in the brain. It's in the mind. Now, yes, we also have these beautiful energy centers. I won't go into all about it now. We'll talk more about the different chakras as the Navaratri begins. And each day as we celebrate a different form of the Mother Goddess, we'll talk about the chakra that she's associated with. So yes, we do feel, of course, in our heart chakra, in that energy center, but ultimately, all of the thinking takes place in the mind. The heart experiences love for sure, oneness for sure, on a deep level. The mind is the calculated one. The mind that's the 50-50, what I've done for you, what am I getting, give and take. That's games of the mind. Now, the mind also functions only in separation. The mind sees everything as separate from itself. The heart knows oneness. And I mention this because when we are in a moment in which our hearts open, in the presence of a master, a guru, on the banks of Ganga, in so many deep, spiritually elevating experiences, our minds just shut down. And that's a good thing, by the way. That's not problematic. It allows us to drop fully into the heart. And in many of those cases, we don't make any kind of conscious choice. It just happens. The heart explodes, tears pour down our eyes, and lo and behold, the thinking mind that is troubled is quiet. I remember when I first came to the banks of Ganga and first had this incredible experience. For days, I was pretty much non-verbal. And I mean, I was a straight A student. I was an academic. I was the one who ended up teaching classes when the teacher didn't show up or was out sick. So for me, non-verbal was not a state that, unless I was sleeping, I pretty much ever found myself in. And I was nonverbal. I mean, all I could say for days as tears poured down my eyes was, Oh my God, it's so beautiful. Oh my God, it's so beautiful. Oh my God, it's so beautiful. So to find yourself at a loss for words, especially a loss for words that center around something that is troubling your mind, is neither surprising nor problematic. It's very natural. As you've dropped into an open heart, the mind quiets. And then, of course, there's also that grace that happens sometimes where our questions just disappear. I remember when I first met Pujya Swamiji, first had his darshan, he would meet people for an hour at a time, 2 hours a day, 10:30 to 11:30 in the morning, and it was either 4 to 5 or 4:30 to 5:30 in the afternoons. And on the rare occasions that the hour ended before the people ended, he would turn to me, because I would just come and sit and just be there and absorb his presence. And I, of course, found myself, if not completely nonverbal, at least not very articulate, not nearly as articulate as I would like to be. And I found it embarrassing, because I always had questions. I always had things to ask. But when he would turn to me and say, yes, I couldn't think of anything. And then, of course, afterwards, later on, things would come to me. And so I would kind of make these mental lists of next time he asks me, here's going to be my very intelligent question I'm going to ask him. And then he would turn to me and say, yes. And my brain was, like oatmeal. Just nothing. And I finally decided, all right, this is really embarrassing. I'm going to write them down. So I made a list in my room one night of questions. And I used to have a little purse that was just one of these little cloth embroidered ones that I had bought here in the market, that small. All I had to carry around were my room keys and some chapstick and maybe, some rupees to get a cup of tea or something. And I put my questions in my purse and come in for darshan. And he turns to me and says, yes. And I'm ecstatic because I've got my list of questions. And I open my purse and they're gone. Now, my purse had no pockets. It wasn't like a proper handbag of a busy woman, with all kinds of things in it. It was a tiny little cloth bag. My keys were there, my chapstick was there, my rupees were there. No list. No secret compartments, no nothing in the purse. And so then I decide, well, I must have lost it along the way. And I go back out and I'm retracing my steps back to my room. It's not there. I knew it was there. I had just put it in my purse. Of course, I say to Pujya Swamiji before I go, can you just give me 2 minutes? I'll be right back. And I get into my room and I start literally tossing my room, like as though somehow, without me remembering it, my list had ended up under my mattress or in my pillowcase or, it's nowhere. And I finally realized, okay, I get it, universe. This is not going to be about what you do well, which is intellectual mind stuff. This is a whole new ballgame, a whole new situation. And no, you don't get to rely on that thinking mind. on your powers of intellect on that in this new situation. That this is now a situation of an open heart, not an overactive mind. So that's another thing that sometimes happens to questions. And when it does, we let them go. I mean, questions are beautiful. It's why we have satsang. It's what enables us to go deeper. But this is why I say so frequently, there's no such thing as a silly question. There's no such thing as a wrong question. As long as it's deeply meaningful for you and it's something that is in some way blocking you on your path. But what a lot of us tend to do is we like to kind of show how philosophically smart we are and use question times as a way to just allow our minds to play games. And those are the questions that tend to disappear in that divine presence. So don't worry when it happens to you. It's a beautiful thing. What if a person does not even realize that he is an angry person? How can he work on his anger when he thinks he is not an angry man? So the very first step in working on anything is awareness. I can't quit smoking if I deny that I smoke. I can't quit drinking if I deny that I drink. I can't quit lying if I deny that I lie. And if I deny that I am impacted by, driven by different emotions, whether it's anger, greed, lust, jealousy, ego, all of the stuff that most of us inside say, I'm not that. I'm not that. Well, then we can't actually become free of them. And this is why it's really important to realize there's no shame in any of this. This is part of the human condition. And if you believe in a perfect God, a God who certainly could have created us without any anger or greed or lust or jealousy, but didn't. I mean, to me, God is perfect. And if God wanted me to be born without any struggle, God would have waved God's magic wand, and that's exactly how I would have been born. But because I believe in a perfect God, a perfect creator, I believe in a perfect creation. Now that doesn't mean that there isn't work to do, but doing the work is part of the perfection. Because it's bringing us back into awareness with the perfection of who we really are, which is these spiritual beings having a human experience in a human body, which is perfect. If God didn't want us to have a human body, we would not have a human body. But the key is awareness. And this is why removing the whole shame element around spirituality is so important. Because we can't grow if I'm denying and repressing and suppressing. Then I can't grow. And so this is why a practice of awareness and mindfulness is so important. Because I may be able to say to you, oh, I'm not angry. I mean, how many times have we ever said to someone, calm down? And they say, I'm calm, what do you mean? You think, oh, that was helpful, okay. People say it all the time, or you say, don't be angry. I'm not angry. Okay. Now, it may be apparent to the person you're talking to that you are not calm, that you're angry. But if it's not apparent to you, then you're just going to keep repeating the same cycles over and over and over again. And that's why we practice mindfulness. It's why we watch first the breath, the easiest place to start. But as we watch the breath, we also watch emotions arise. You can see anger arising. It doesn't arise out of the blue. If you're really aware, you see it start to build. You feel it. The heart starts to beat a little faster. The face starts to get a little flushed. The vision starts to get a little narrow. So we have to acknowledge these aspects of ourselves without shame, recognizing that we're all here doing the work to come back to the truth, to know the truth. But simply denying something does not actually make it go away. If you are, as it sounds from the question, like the friend, the loved one, the companion of someone, because of course the question was in the third person, not the first, so it sounds like they're asking about another person in their life. The challenge is that the more you say you are an angry man, the more angry they're going to get, and the less likely they are to admit it and acknowledge it. And this is where maybe simply dropping the idea of trying to convince them they're angry, but instead bring in some spiritual practices that you could do together. Start a daily meditation. And if he doesn't want to do it, no problem, you do it. You do it. Invite him each day. Travel together to holy places, listen to satsang, have darshan of saints, go to katha. And slowly, slowly, slowly bring him into more and more spiritual places. And help him understand. But until and unless someone acknowledges it, unfortunately there's not much you can do. And the last piece, though, is to realize, everybody's on their own karmic journey. And not to judge someone else's. The universe is infinitely patient. You don't learn it this life, you'll learn it next life. You don't learn it next life, you'll learn it the life after that. And so not everyone may be necessarily on your timeline. And if someone really can't see something, no matter how much you try to show them, whether it's about their emotions, whether it's about God, divinity, spirituality, consciousness, don't judge. Because that just makes you fall back on your path. That just creates separation in your mind. Give yourself the beautiful spiritual challenge of, can you love someone who may be at a different stage of a karmic journey without any judgment of what's better or worse, higher or lower? No spiritual arrogance here. Just a love for wherever that person may be. And the truth is that a loving, accepting, spacious presence is the very best environment for someone actually to start doing their work. You can't do it with that agenda, though, but just so that you know, unconditional love, tender spaciousness is the place in which people blossom and open and unfold. But you need to be prepared to love them anyway. Because that's your journey. Your work is, because remember, they've been sent to you, you've been sent to them. You've been karmically drawn to each other. And maybe the lesson for you in this is not, how can I make him less angry? How can I teach him? But how can I learn to love in the face of anger? How can I learn not to make my self-identity based on what he says? Because these are important lessons. Questions here? Yes. Yabia. Welcome back.
Thank you. Very happy to be back. So my question is, could you speak about your experience on Bhakti Yoga?
Bhakti Yoga, path of devotion. So, for me, it really happened very spontaneously. I was raised in a Reform Jewish community. We were not religious. We went to synagogue because it mattered to my grandparents. First Friday evening of every month was family night. Grandma wanted to go to synagogue. We all went to synagogue. The holidays and observances that we celebrated were ones that were focused much more on the history, the culture, the ancestors, than actually on God. But as a 25-year-old academic, it never occurred to me that I was missing anything. It never occurred to me that I should be loving God. God was a nameless, formless being whom I feared occasionally. Not much. I mean, I didn't move through my life afraid of God, but, occasionally on holidays where God was making important decisions, I was afraid. When I came to India and had this powerful experience of awakening, my heart just burst open in love. That's why the only thing I could say was, oh my God, it's so beautiful. Oh my God, it's so beautiful. Now, there wasn't at the time an object of my love. I mean, it didn't matter what I was looking at. A telephone pole, literally. Telephone poles, pillars. There used to be these marble pillars on the Ghat that have since been removed to make more room for seating. But we had these marble pillars, and I used to look at them. The steps, people, random people, didn't matter. Whatever I saw was so beautiful because I was seeing God everywhere. But as time went on, I developed love experiences for different forms of God. I remember my love for Krishna began on a trip that Swamiji took me on. He was going down to Vrindavan. I had been here maybe 3-4 weeks. I had never heard of Vrindavan. I didn't know anything. Sure, I had heard of Krishna, but I didn't really know anything. And he was going on this trip that was part of a huge, beautiful yatra called the Vraj Yatra that was being led by these other two beautiful saints. And we went down. He said to me, "Do you want to go?" And again, I didn't know where we were going, but it didn't matter where we were going. I mean, if he had said, I'm on my way to hell, would you like to join me? I would have been like, yeah, you're going to be there, right? So I said, yes, of course, I want to go. And we got there, and we were there for the day of doing the parikrama, the on foot walking around the mountain of Govardhan, which is a very sacred mountain in the stories of Bhagavan Krishna. And people do a pilgrimage around it. And it's 21 kilometers. And you go barefoot. And we did it in this huge group of people, this huge yatra. And everybody kept asking me, I was the only foreigner there, and everybody kept asking me, "Are your feet okay? Are your feet okay?" And I remember being so perplexed because I had no idea I had feet. I mean, I felt like I was floating, that I was being carried. Feet? Like, what are feet? Why are you asking me this question? And I was so full of love of God. And we went shortly thereafter to the ashram of one of the saints who had been running the pilgrimage in a place called Ramanreti. Now, Ramanreti literally means the ret, the sand of Bhagavan Krishna. And the ashram is built on that sand. And I remember lying and rolling around in the sand with just tears pouring down my eyes. And I had no idea what was happening to me. I hadn't read the Srimad Bhagavatam. I hadn't read the Mahabharata. I hadn't even read the Bhagavad Gita by that point. I didn't know anything. I didn't have any framework in which to put this. But the experiences of love were so powerful that suddenly I started loving Krishna. In fact, when I learned about mantras and I decided I wanted one, and I went to Pujya Swamiji and I asked him to give me a mantra, and he made me wait. He didn't tell me why. He just said, "Not yet." And I would keep going, and he would say, "Not yet." And I decided, well, I wasn't going to deprive myself of the benefit of a mantra just because my guru wouldn't give me one. And so I made up a mantra. And my mantra was, "I love you, Krishna." And I used to do my japa with "I love you, Krishna" for 2 years until Pujya Swamiji finally granted me an actual Sanskrit mantra. So for me, that devotion just blossomed in that way. And then my love for Hanumanji blossomed one night, as funny as it sounds, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where I had gone to see Pujya Swamiji. It was after he had sent me back to America to finish studies, and I had finished them, and he was in Pittsburgh where he had built the Hindu Jain temple and was spearheading the Encyclopedia of Hinduism project. And I went to meet him there. And he said to me one evening there, he said, "You are going to do great things. You're going to touch millions." And I remember thinking that it sounded the way that my mother would say, "You're the prettiest girl in the class." Like you know it's not true, but you appreciate the love of the one who's saying it to you to make you feel happy. But you don't actually suddenly start thinking you're the prettiest girl in the class just because your mother told you were. And in the same way, I remember when Pujya Swamiji said that, thinking, oh, that's so sweet. You know, he's trying to make me feel good. And I said to him, you know, I know that I'm intelligent. I know that I'm going to be able to do something. But I know that I'm not at that level, as you say, and that's okay. Like, you don't have to, you know, say these nice things that so obviously are not true. And he was quiet, and the next morning when I got up and went up to do pranam to him, sitting on the table where he was sitting was a book about this thick of the Ramayana. And it was an English translation, not a verse-by-verse translation, but it was more of the story of the Ramayana. Not quite for kids, but nonetheless a really easy version. It was the Bhartiya Vidya Bhavan version of Ramayana. And he gave it to me to read. I read it during the day. I ended up staying awake all night reading it. And by the next morning, I had finished it. And I went to him the next morning with just tears pouring down my face. And I said, I get it. I get it. If Hanumanji could accomplish and achieve all of these miraculous feats just out of devotion to God, because that's what Hanumanji says. When he gets asked at the end of the war, how did you do it? How did you fly across the ocean? How did you carry the Himalayas in your hand? How did you put the sun under your armpit? Like, how did you do these things? He didn't say, well, don't you know who I am? He didn't say, you know, I've been working out at the gym and I've got this special trainer and he's teaching me the carry the mountains pose. He didn't say I've got some very special vitamin tonic, nothing. He just said, I take Bhagwan Ram's name, I take God's name, I think of God, I invoke God, and it happens. It happens. And so I said to Pujya Swamiji, I said, I get it. It's not about him and what he can do. It's about the grace of God. It's about the miracle of God. And so, if through taking God's name, this essentially monkey could accomplish all that, well then maybe I really can do something with my life. Maybe I really can accomplish something beautiful. And so from then on, my devotion for Hanumanji kept blossoming. Of just make me that devotee like you are. Make me that devoted, that humble, that surrendered, that I know that A, I can do anything, and B, it's not about me. It's you. You can do anything. And if you want to, you can do it through me. But it's all about you. And so, Bhagwan Krishna, Hanumanji, Ganga, it's been a beautiful experience of bhakti. And, you know, it's interesting because in the teaching of Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta, it's a teaching of non-duality. There's nothing but God. And so a lot of times these questions arise of, well, how do you worship God as somehow this form or that form when there's nothing but God? Like, isn't that kind of a lower form of spirituality than this non-dual form? And the truth is that if you look throughout history at the bhaktas, the devotees, the enlightened saints who were steeped in devotion, not only in India, not only in the Hindu tradition. You can find them in every tradition. Those lovers of God. Well, it's not that they don't know that they're one with God. It's not that they don't know that it's all God. It's not that somehow they haven't had that experience yet. It's that they choose to temporarily forget that, because being in love is so beautiful. It's like, I remember when I was learning fiction writing at Stanford, my professor said something that's always stuck with me. He said, the world of fiction requires a willing suspension of disbelief. You have to willingly suspend your disbelief in order to enjoy fiction. If every time you read fiction you say, that couldn't happen, well, that's impossible, well, I don't believe that, you'll never enjoy a good novel. It requires a willing suspension of disbelief. And I think that the practice of devotion requires a willing suspension of knowledge. That I'm willingly suspending temporarily that which I know on the deepest level to be true. Because being in love feels so beautiful. In the same way that I willingly suspend disbelief because I enjoy a good science fiction novel. And so on a much deeper level, I'm convinced, I mean, I haven't interviewed them, but I'm deeply convinced that all of the mystics, the sages, the saints, the lovers of God throughout history have made this very conscious, willing suspension of the fact that I know God is in me, is everywhere, and yet to love God is so beautiful that I am willing to forget that I know God is me so that I can experience this joy of loving God in a particular form, in a particular name, in a particular way. Beautiful. Other questions? Yes.
I don't know, but see,
आप पकड़ लीजिए उनके लिए.
I'm not able to see. If I close my eyes and sit for meditation, I'm not able to see what I want, but only the nasty things or whatever I have seen that is not good, what I don't like, those things come in my mind.
And what do you want to see?
I go to a temple, I go with so much of devotion, I have seen God with so much of love. I want that to come in me when I close my eyes.
Okay, beautiful. So, the mind is full of what we feed it. Whatever we put in is what's there. And so whether it's in our dreams, whether it's when we close our eyes to sit and meditate, that which is gonna arise is whatever I've put in. Now, you may not consciously be putting in nasty, ugly things, but this is why it's so important, when we speak about fasting. Fasting isn't just what you eat through your mouth as food. We take in food through all of our senses. And in the same way, let's say that you had a sensitive stomach, or you were in training for a particular sporting event, or something that you really wanted. You needed your physical body, your stomach especially, your digestion, to be really top-notch. You'd be really careful about what you ate. No matter how many times somebody said, oh, just one, you'd be like, no way. Because I know what that gulab jamun is going to do to my stomach. No. The problem is, we're not nearly so careful about what we take into our subconscious minds. We take it in through our ears, that which we listen to on TV, on the radio, on social media, in conversation. Do you find yourself hanging around with people who are negative and gossipy, or, judgmental? That'll go inside. We take it in throughout the world. We take it in through our eyes, what we see on TV, what we see on social media, what we see in movies. And so we have to be really careful about what we take in, because that's the stuff that's gonna come up. Now, sometimes some of it also could just be old karmas burning themselves out. That is also possible. If you feel like, I never see these things on TV, online, in movies, in books, I'm not surrounded by them, I'm not thinking about them, consciously or unconsciously, it may just be some old karma that's working itself out. But I would look really carefully about the TV you watch, the movies you watch, the books you read, the people you follow on social media, whose WhatsApp chats you open. It's got a way of sort of accosting us. We didn't mean to be watching these videos, but somebody just sent them to us, and then before we even know it, we've clicked on it and we're watching it. So we have to really take back control over what goes in. But the second piece is that meditation is actually not supposed to be a time of even seeing really beautiful things. Yes, it's nicer to see beautiful things than not beautiful things. But seeing beautiful things also is a distraction. Meditation is actually supposed to be a time when whatever arises in the mind, it's negative, it's ugly, it's beautiful, whatever it may be. My job is one thing and one thing only, which is to bring my awareness back to whatever I'm meditating on. Whether it's my breath, whether it's a mantra, whatever I'm meditating upon, whether it's just pure awareness, meditation is not a time for our mind to wander off into beautiful places. Again, yes, it's nicer if it wanders into nice places than not nice places. But even if you find your mind seeing beautiful things, bring it back. Don't get lost. Don't get distracted. Meditation is about the process of seeing, not what you see. So right now, I'm seeing this piece of paper. Now I'm seeing this glass of water. Now I'm seeing my hand. Meditation is about not what I'm seeing, but about connecting as the one who is seeing. So even though what I'm seeing is changing, me as the one who sees stays constant. The connection with that which is constant is why we meditate. So you will see a lot of things when you meditate. They may be visions, they may be thoughts, they may be memories, they may be scenes from the future that you either do or do not want to happen. In every single circumstance, your job is simply bring the awareness back. Bring the awareness back. Bring it back. And so try that when you meditate, rather than worrying about that you're seeing A rather than B or X rather than Y. Connect as the one who's seeing. So yeah, there may be negative, ugly things flashing in front of my eyes, but I'm not those things. I'm the seer of those things. And when there's beautiful things, I'm also not those things. I'm the seer of those things. And allow yourself to connect as that. And then you won't be troubled by what you're seeing. Beautiful. Have a beautiful rest of your evening. A beautiful morning and day to our family joining us online from all over the world. There will not be satsang tomorrow. Apologies, I have to go to Delhi for one day. It's actually exciting. We're starting Arti on the banks of the Yamuna River. As we have Arti here on the banks of Ganga with Pujya Swamiji's vision and commitment to worshipping our rivers rather than using them as trash dumps or sewer lines. He's starting a very special Arti on the banks of the Yamuna. So I'll be in Delhi just tomorrow night, back on Monday morning. And so we will gather again day after tomorrow on Monday the 26th. And I look so forward to seeing you all. Monday is also the first day of Navaratri. So during Navaratri, we'll also be talking each day about the different forms of the Mother Goddess, the chakra, the energy center that she's connected with. And of course, we'll still have our questions and answers, but we'll also talk about that sacred mother, divine feminine energy.